Bendy and the Dark Revival is the long-awaited follow-up to the wildly successful Bendy and the Ink Machine. After seeing overwhelming support on their sleeper hit, Joey Drew Studios Inc. would go back to the drawing board and give us a more refined story for the second game, taking lessons learned from the first and almost using their second outing to recontextualize the universe to align with a new vision for the series. While Ink Machine was kinda slapped together on the fly, trying to capitalize on their unexpected surge in popularity by putting out episodes over the span of 2 years, Dark Revival was a full release that would give us a more streamlined narrative, which today we're going to be taking a look at.
Let go!
Come find me, Audrey. Come find me, and I'll show you your purpose. I'll show you the truth.
This can't be real.
And now, we die.
To begin with a bit of an overview, we play as a woman named Audrey, who's an animator for Archgate Pictures. Archgate being the studio that would pick up the dormant Bendy franchise and give it new life because their founder, Nathan Arch, was a friend of the now deceased Joey Drew. Audrey's working on the cartoon late one night in 1973 when she gets sucked into the ink machine courtesy of the janitor named Wilson. Wilson having discovered the power of the ink machine, where he's managed to stop the cycle, which has thrown the entire cartoon world out of whack. We'll get to the cycle in a bit, but as for Audrey, she makes her way around the world, running into multiple people that we encountered in the first game, as well as quite a few that we didn't. One of the biggest new additions being Joey Drew himself, who's not the real Joey, but rather a memory of the famed creator. The imposter informing us that the deceased Joey was actually Audrey's father, as well as some other mind-warping revelations that recontextualize events from the first game. We also meet Bendy, sort of, but in truth he's the Ink Demon in disguise. Wilson has a bunch of posters on the walls claiming that he killed the Ink Demon and is thus the savior of this world, but rather he just found a way to stuff him into this weakened form who's much more docile and friendly. As for how he managed to do that, Wilson has learned how to manipulate the ink to create new beings unique to this cycle. This is where the Keepers come from, and why they are so loyal to Wilson. They're the ones who would experiment with the Ink Demon and force him into this bendy form, as well as the ones who would kidnap and contain any Cycle Breakers. Cycle Breakers being people who have some knowledge of how to restart the cycle, mainly just a who's who from the first Bendy game.
Why would you be a threat to them?
I'm what they call a cycle breaker. Once upon a time, I knew how to start the cycle over. And when that happens, everything begins again. Completely new. Obviously, Wilson and the Keepers don't want that to happen.
Anyway, Audrey discovers all this stuff as she makes her way through the world, eventually running back into Wilson, who tells her that he needs her assistance. For some reason, Audrey hears him out, and he says that the Ink Demon is why this world is suffering, but with her aid, he can finally put him down for good. She's willing to help, even against the better judgment of her peers, but what she has in mind and what he has in mind are two completely different minds. Wilson wants to sacrifice her to make a new all-powerful deity in the form of his own creation, Ship Ahoy Dudley. Audrey's not looking to part ways with her soul though, and instead pushes him into the murder box to have him transformed. This resulting in a boss fight that ends with the Ink Demon showing up and putting down the new contender vying for top spot in Cartoon Land. Then, he eats Audrey. This meal turning him into a new, even more powerful monster. As for why, it's likely because Audrey herself was born of ink shenanigans, as was told to us earlier by fake Joey Drew, who reappears to try and save his quasi-daughter. He gives her the end roll of film, as well as some words of inspiration, before the Ink Demon crushes him, and in a rage, Audrey takes control of the Hulk's body. This resulting in her rushing to a camera to play the film and finally end this very prolonged cycle. That's the canon ending, although there are two other semi-endings that are just in this game for fun. The first being where Audrey never leaves her desk to get coffee, and thus works straight through going on her journey. Then the second being where you collect all of the Illusions of Living books, and when the credits roll we see Audrey in a padded cell. Neither of these endings really mean anything, at least I don't think, but they exist. Anyway, as for the actual ending, the game gives us a cliffhanger of Bendy being in the real world, suggesting that Audrey has kind of taken up Wilson's legacy. Wilson's whole plan was to control the Ink world so that he could create things and bring them into the real world. This would, in turn, finally make him a person of worth, bringing him out of his father's shadow. His father being Nathan Arch, the head of Archgate, who we never meet, but seems like a pretty great man. As for how this game recontextualizes the first, let's head back to Joey Drew's exposition dump about halfway through. In the first game, the cycle is implied but never explicitly spelled out for us. You can pick it up through the game's ending and the writing on the walls in New Game Plus, however, here it is a much more prominent story element. The cycle has been stopped by Wilson, which has allowed the cartoon world to expand in the way that it has, with the conditions of everyone deteriorating because of the unnatural length. But what is easily the most mind-breaking change would be the reason that Inkverse was created in the first place.
In his anger, Joey used an evil machine to create another world. A world made of paper and ink, where he'd torment his own version of Henry forevermore.
Through this PowerPoint, it sounds like the only reason that Joey decided to make this world was because he wanted to torture a fake version of his former friend. This is like the single most petty thing I think I've ever heard. Joey was so mad that Henry quit that he made an entire universe just to torment a fictionalized version of him. I mean, it's admirable, but my god, that's not what I took away from the first game. In the original, it seemed as if the world was created because Joey was struggling financially and got roped into the idea that he could turn it around with Bendyland. However, he wanted the characters of Bendyland to be indistinguishable from their drawn counterparts, and so he would fall down a rabbit hole of contracting Gent, and this whole ink machine debacle kinda got out of hand. Here, though, he's just mad at Henry and wants to see him suffer. Not the direction I would have taken it, but hey, I don't make games. Anyway, though, he explains that Joey would come around to a more sympathetic frame of mind when he would meet the new voice actress of Alice Angel, Allison Pendle. He would then decide to give Henry his own angel, seemingly modeled after Allison, then he would somehow use the ink machine to create a daughter. How exactly is anyone's guess? I know how babies are typically made. If I were to venture a total guess, I would say that he created an ink person and copulated with it. If I had to venture who, I'd say Betty. Otherwise, this little interaction is way too weird.
But Wilson takes care of me, keeps me safe. He once said I remind him of something he called his mother. Tell me, is that a good thing, where you two are from?
I'm not sure. I don't think I ever had one.
It's strange. I really don't want to think about it that hard, but Betty basically only exists in this game to be theory bait, so there's mine. To me, this game is attempting to paint Joey in a more positive light, whereas the first saw him as the villain. How exactly they square that with him sacrificing his employees to the machine to create Lost Ones or Twisted Alice Angel, I don't know. They kinda murk up how ink creatures are created in this one to obfuscate that detail. Clearly these things can just be created because Henry isn't the real Henry, but they keep the sacrifice element with Shippoy Dudley, so it's just confusing. In my opinion, they were trying to shift the narrative from Joey being the big bad to Gent being the big bad, which gives more context to the post-credit scene where we see Gent taking the ink machine. Through audio logs, we learn that Archgate wasn't actually supposed to get the ink machine. It was a mistake when they purchased all of Joey Drew's assets. The CEO of Gent, Alan Gray, coming to Archgate in an attempt to retrieve it, but was turned away. These things suggesting to me that when we return to the series in a full-fledged release, it'll likely be in some conflict with the Gent Corporation. What that conflict will be is anyone's guess, but if Audrey returns, then it would be interesting to see her unleash the ink world into the real world as she attempts to defeat Gent. Although, since they took the ink machine, she probably doesn't have access to it anymore, so maybe it'll just be a buddy cop of Bendy and Audrey trying to track it down. Bendy slowly turning back into the ink demon as he goes longer and longer outside of the cartoon world. Complete speculation, I have no idea, but the series seems to be hitting a bit of a snag at the moment, with Bendy the Cage having been put on hold. Far as I know, Bendy Lone Wolf is still coming out, but it's another isometric game, and if it's like Boris and the Dark Survival, it probably won't have much lore behind it. Then Bendy 3 is also in production, so we'll get more at some point. Anyway, thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.